Okay, so part two about this question about the low spinning shot, the shot that kind of comes out low with a lot of spin, bounces once, and then kind of just stops quickly, or spins and stops quickly. Part two is about friction and the ball, how we get the most friction on the ball. Now, I've been hitting some shots on the FlightScope today with a Pro V1X, with a Srixon Z-Star XV, which is the ball I currently play, and with a TaylorMade burner. So there's three slightly different balls. The Pro V1X and the Z-Star XV are actually close to the same price point. They're both tour level balls, but they have different characteristics. And for a good reason, they have different characteristics. And then the burner is a little bit lower level ball. It's kind of an off-the-shelf, half the price is a Pro V1X or half the price of a premium ball. So here's what I found. And I knew this already, but I wanted to validate it with the FlightScope so that I could give you guys real numbers. The Pro V1X spun the most out of all three balls. Now, it also launched the lowest. And that makes a lot of sense because, as we were talking about a little bit in the last video, as the club approaches the ball, if we've got forward shaft lean and the club's coming down slightly and the ball actually grabs the club face, or the club face grabs the cover, it will actually influence the launch of the ball to launch a little bit lower because the direction of the face is pointed in one direction and the path of the club is traveling down. So that downward path of the club and grabbing the ball is actually going to influence the launch to make the ball launch a little bit lower. So the more friction, or the grippier the cover of the ball, and usually that's the more expensive the ball, but the grippier the cover, the more friction, the lower it's going to launch. And of course, with the most amount of friction, we have the most amount of spin. So that's with the Pro V1X. I got the lowest launch and the highest number of spin. Second ball was the ball I play, which is a Z-Star XV, Srixon Z-Star XV. It spun at around 5,000. This was about a 60-yard shot. It spun at around 5,000 RPMs on average. It had a launch angle which was 2 degrees higher than what I have with the Pro V1X. And it carried about the same distance, but when it hit the green, it actually released. It actually landed on the green and went an extra, I don't know, it's about 4 yards past the Pro V1X, and they both carried the same distance. The final ball I hit was the TaylorMade burner. This ball launched 2 degrees higher than the Srixon Z-Star XV, and the spin rate was 3,500, so it's quite a bit less. And so that matches, right? Excuse me. If the ball has a lot of friction, it's going to launch lower. If it has less friction, it launches higher. So less friction means less spin, so higher launching. It all matches up pretty well. Kind of what I expected to see. So that TaylorMade burner launched a little higher. It actually flew about the same distance, and I can see from here it's probably about 2 yards farther than, or ended up being 2 yards farther than, my Srixon Z-Star XV. Now, there are a couple other factors that influence whether or not this shot is possible. The low spinning, dropping and stopping kind of shot. One, if you're not hitting into the wind, if you're hitting downwind, it's going to be difficult for you to maintain that spin after your ball takes its first bounce because the wind's kind of pushing it forward. So it's going to take its first bounce, it's going to get a farther or a bigger first jump. It's going to be coming in with a lot more speed because it's downwind. So it's probably not going to grab as quickly. It's probably going to hop more and release more because it's downwind. And that's absolutely true. If I'm hitting into the wind is actually slowing my ball down. So as my ball is going out, the wind is slowing my ball down. So it has a good amount of spin. When it lands, if it's going slowly when it lands, it's got a much better chance of bouncing once and stopping quickly. The other influencer we have is grain. So if I'm hitting into the grain, I've got blades of grass that are growing toward me. When my ball comes in, that first bounce is going to kill a lot of its forward momentum because the grain or the grass is growing toward my golf ball. So if I'm hitting into the grain and I've got a lot of spin and I'm into the wind maybe, I might see that ball actually take a short hop and spin back of where it was, even from a distance of 50 or 60 yards. Another influencing factor is the length of the blades of grass. So if I have very short blades of grass, if I have a very tight, clean surface on the green, and my ball kind of into the wind lands softly, when it grabs, when it hits the green, it's going to maintain a lot of its spin, and also because the green's going to be faster, it's going to come back a lot more. If I'm hitting downwind into the same situation, I'll still see the spin, and it still should grab pretty well, but it's not going to grab nearly as well if it were into the wind. So the best chance for making this happen is the highest spinning ball that you can possibly get, the best impact alignments, so practicing getting that consistent contact with a little bit of forward shaft lean, no grass in between the club face and the ball, and then conditions that actually support what you're going for. So into the grain, maybe even slightly uphill, into the wind. If you have a shot like that, you're absolutely a lot more likely to see this thing hop once, check, and stop than you will if you're downwind, downhill, down grain with a ball that can't possibly produce the spin to make this shot happen. So I hope that answers some of your questions. I hope that answers the main question of how to hit this shot, and then maybe it's possible that you've not even been able to hit this shot in the past because you're not using the right equipment, and it's possible too that the course you play doesn't have fast enough greens or the right conditions when the ball lands. So really consider that. If you're not playing a spinnier ball, then you really don't even have this shot. It's not even possible because you can't spin it enough to get it to grab the way you need it to. And then again, if it's not into the grain or into the wind, it's going to be really difficult to pull that off. I've got another video about why I play the ball I play, which just talks a little bit about impact dynamics with every club in the bag and why I choose to play the ball I play. So if you're more interested in picking a ball that you'd like to play, check that video out. But hopefully that answers your questions about that, the impact alignments and the spin for those kind of drop and stop shots, those low spinning check shots.